Welcome to the Kaysville City Council meeting for February 15th, 2024. Our opening will be provided by Councilmember Abby Hunt, who will then lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thanks.
I just want to welcome everyone tonight. I appreciate you being here. It's nice to have people in the audience. It doesn't happen very often. So good to see you. And I don't know if anyone has been watching the news lately. We had a few events in the news this week that involved some of our employees, specifically our police and fire department. And so I guess tonight for my opening, I just wanted to recognize all of our great employees. We're presenting the Employee of the Quarter tonight. And, there was those brave acts this week by our police and some even that didn't make it into the news. It's been kind of a crazy week. We also received a positive report about our public works department and the effort they put they were out working on, I think it was lights, and it was raining. And so I just, appreciate all the work that they do and want to say thanks to all of our employees. And then I'll just lead us in the pledge. So go ahead and, if you don't mind standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Hunt, for your opening. We appreciate that. Okay, let me just kind of give, for those of you who are new, just to give you a little bit of a brief rundown and explanation of how our meetings work. Number 2 on the agenda, you'll see call to the public. We have 6 people that have signed up to speak. They'll have 3 minutes each, and during their presentation, our job as council members is to listen. And so we don't respond back. There's not a lot of there's no interaction, actually. It's your time to be able to speak. But prior to call to the public, and I will list the names of people that have signed up to speak, so you'll have an opportunity to come up. I just wanted to give you a brief update of where we're at in terms of the homeless shelter. Will you raise your hand if you're here to talk about that or concerned about that? Okay, good. That's what everyone seems to be here for. We appreciate your support. We appreciate you being here. So first of all, hopefully you were able to pick up this paper that was back on the table. It's called Davis County Homeless Shelter Quick Facts. This is a statement issued by Kaysville City that explains where we are and how we got there. So first of all, I just want you to know, no decisions have been made in terms of a formal recommendation for a location anywhere in Davis County. No decisions have been made. These have been conversations. These have been discussions. There was some correspondence that was widely circulated that had incorrect information. A couple of the things that we'd like to point out are that we've had council discussions, and these have been items on our agenda where we've talked about this homeless shelter discussion. Last year, the state legislature passed a bill, House Bill 499, indicating that counties of second and first class, Davis County is a class 2 county, are required to provide a winter response shelter. So that's the reason that the conversations even started. As a member city of Davis County, they asked for volunteers, for mayors to serve on the task force. I volunteered because I was going to say, that's weird. Okay, someone's watching YouTube? Okay, that's great. Anyway, just wanted to let you know, so that's the whole reason this conversation has even started. The city has been, the council, we stand united in that we want to be part of a solution. Kaysville City doesn't have the ability to respond to the needs of this unsheltered population that we've been tasked as a state to provide for and prepare for. There are many reasons why a shelter, specifically in Kaysville, doesn't make sense. We are not near mass transit. We don't have job opportunities. We don't have social services. We don't have the ability to support mental health and wraparound services. And so we're not a great location for a shelter. However, according to the pit count numbers, there are homeless people in Davis County, and we want to be, involved in that conversation as to where a permanent shelter could be. So where we're at now is that the task force has asked the state legislature to appropriate $30 million in one-time funding to put a shelter, well, to plan for a shelter not Kaysville, plan for a shelter in Davis County. And then we've asked for $2 million in ongoing funding to support a shelter because, like all of you realize, a shelter is going to require quite a lot of maintenance, administrative support, police support, food support, lots of different ongoing expenses in order to maintain a shelter. And so right now we're just waiting for the legislative process to be vetted and for the Executive Appropriations Committee to make a recommendation to the legislature as to how much funding should go where. So we're waiting for that. The session ends March 1st, and so every day we're keeping track, paying attention to those bills as they get amended. There is an amendment coming to House Bill 499. It's being worked on right now. I don't think that it's been fully released as in terms of the latest amendment. We're hoping that they will carve out an exclusion for counties with a plan. So if you submit a county plan, a task force plan, then you won't, as a county, be required to provide a temporary shelter. Because our argument is, if you put money into a temporary shelter anywhere, then it becomes a permanent shelter. You've invested money, you're remodeling, and so we all understand how that works. And so a more appropriate response to that would be to submit a plan and then have time to find a location, to secure property, to build or remodel a building, to do some studies, to get some data, to make sure that it makes sense to be able to identify a location and then go through that process. So that's where we're at. Let's see, sure, just one second. I will tell you that Commissioner Lorraine Kamalu is the county commissioner in charge of Health and Human Services, and Homeless Services falls under her responsibilities. She's going to attend a council meeting on March 7th, and she will present the information that we have at that time. So would encourage you to participate in that meeting. You can either come in person and show up, or you can listen to it. I will turn the time over really fast just to Jason. Did I miss anything? Is there anything we need to fill in?
No, Mayor, I think you covered that very well. I just echo that the conversations that we're hearing out of the task force are very similar to the kind of comments that we're hearing from residents, is that this isn't a great place for a homeless shelter, and I think it sounds like people are on the same page there, so that should be comforting news. But yeah, just a couple more weeks, we'll be out of the legislative session, and then we look forward to hearing Commissioner Kamalu's comments in 3 weeks.
Thank you so much. And just to make sure that it's very clear, no voting has occurred, no action or recommendations have occurred. There's been conversations. Hey, let's look at some buildings the county owns. That's what you would first do. So we've had conversations about that. We as a council wanted to make sure that those conversations were very public and that you were involved and that people know that these conversations are occurring. So that's why it was on the October 19th agenda as a discussion item under billboards. There was a conversation about property in another city. And then again on January 4th, we had a conversation about the homeless shelter legislation and the bill requiring some sort of response. We've updated you, and we have done updates throughout between October up to now. So just so you know, we want everyone part of the process, and we really believe in coming together and being able to create a great solution. Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Appreciate you allowing me just a minute. I just want to say thank you to Mayor Tran for joining the Homeless Council. I don't know, is that the right way to say it?
It has an official name.
It has an official name. But because our own mayor was a part of that, we heard about a potential, the potential of the county putting a temporary shelter in Kaysville at the very get-go and beginning. At the moment we heard it, we started talking about it as a council, and we were able to get ahead of this. Oftentimes with public policy and things like that, sometimes you don't hear about things until it's too late. And so thank you, Mayor, for being ahead of that. And just echoing what the Mayor said and what Jason said, it's we're united on this, and ultimately it's not, this isn't a position against those who are downtrodden, homeless, whatsoever. This is purely a position where can we as a community handle this? And it's been a clear answer that no, the two locations discussed, they're just not suitable locations. And the mayor and the council, we want to get to a solution that works for Davis County, an area that actually has all the resources that could handle something like that. And so, yeah, just thank you to the council and the mayor for that. So.
Thank you so much. And I just will make, thank you, Councilmember Jackson. One point of clarification. So Davis County as a body, as in terms of the county commissioners, really won't be making the ultimate recommendation. The recommendation will come from the task force, which I'm a part of. I'm one of those votes. And so I just want to make sure there's been a lot of back and forth semantics, points of clarification. We just want to make sure that we are being transparent and really straightforward as far as who actually makes decisions about things. And some of the bills are in the process of getting amended and changed, and so we're just waiting for those updates. So please reach out if you have any questions. So anyway, now I'll turn the time over to you that have signed up. We have Dan Chase, Candace Miller, Jill Dredge, Val Starkey, and Jason Largy. If you'll come up in that order, that would be great. You'll have a timer that will time you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Tran and the council. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm here to talk about homeless, and just for you all, my name is Dan Chase. I live on Laurelwood. I worked for the federal government for 28 years in Social Security Administration. We work with the homeless and do a lot of outreach. It is a very, very, very difficult population to assist for many, many reasons. And I feel like I've also worked in downtown Salt Lake City and downtown Ogden for my entire career and have seen kind of the migration and the evolution. And I feel like I have a perspective there. So that's why I'm here today. So I appreciate you allowing me, as well as I do appreciate your forward thinking and putting yourself forward for being on the task force. That's truly the only way to get out ahead of some of those things. But I know it takes your time, and so I just want to say thank you for that. And I do understand that HB 499 is a state law, and the task force is convened in response to that, as Davis County being a county of that size. Additionally, I also hope, and I'm glad that it seems like the narrative isn't like, well, if you're a liberal or a conservative, like you're against homelessness and don't care, or you're for. I think that's silly. Like, everybody wants to help people and do the right thing, and I hope that we can be part of the right solution or the best solution. There's no perfect solution. That's why nobody has solved homelessness. If we do, then we deserve 1 million gold stars. So that's great. So I do want to make just a couple of points. First of all, when they closed Rio Grande downtown, and this will be quick because it doesn't really germane to what we're talking about. When they closed Rio Grande, I was already working downtown, and I just want to mention unintended consequences that no one could put their finger on and predict, and you can't walk them back. That's toothpaste that does not go back in the tube at any moment. And now, instead of having a problem at Rio Grande, they have a problem everywhere in Salt Lake City, and it is everywhere. And again, the people have issues and they need help, but that did not help. And so I just want to kind of speak to unintended consequences that you can't predict by, say, moving an issue. I also want to say that Davis County seems to have an issue with not with unsheltered homelessness, but maybe homeless insufficient or home insufficiency. So trying to solve a problem with a solution that does not work very well in Salt Lake County here, where the problem is actually different, is not a solution either. So I just want to kind of, my time's coming to an end, but I just want to say that since the model doesn't work, I just want to end by saying doing the wrong thing for the right reasons is still wrong. So anything I can do to help and support you, I'm happy to be involved as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Candace, thank you.
My name is Candace Miller, and I'd like to talk about the homeless shelter on 20 North, 600 West in Kaysville. I would just like to inform you that I live within walking distance of that building. I have 3 children. One child is 12 years old and will be walking to school next year. I have volunteered a lot of places with the homeless in Illinois and Phoenix. And I want to let you know what happens with these type of homeless shelters, that they take people in at 8 p.m. and then they make them leave at 6 a.m. What they do is they loiter all day. So what you're going to be doing is, I don't see a homeless shelter issue or homeless population issue here in Kaysville. You're going to be bringing it here because what they do is there's so many beds that they can take. And so once they kick them out at that time in the morning, those people will stay very close to the shelter, and a lot of them don't have adequate transportation. So you're going to be turning Barnes Park into a homeless shelter, okay, during the day. I want to just let you know, I want to paint this picture for you, that Kaysville will become a homeless shelter outside during the day as these people stay close enough to stand in line to get a bed the next night. I am close enough to that shelter that I feel that my child would be at risk. I've lived in Phoenix to be close enough to know that homeless people have mental problems. They also have opiate addictions. These are unstable people that are unsafe. They will, what this specific location is located right next to $1 million homes, okay? Burglary, everything will go through the roof. I'm telling you, I would consider seriously moving if that happens to a different location. I think you would literally be turning Kaysville upside down from a family-friendly area to a very unsafe. You would be bringing things that you just don't want to see. And you would be trafficking things closer to kids that they would have access to. So that has been my experience. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for sharing your experience with that. We appreciate it. Jill.
These are some facts from Davis County websites. Davis County Grants and Community Development. Project proposals must be for activities located within the eligible boundaries of Davis County or demonstrate the client served for which county CDBG funds will be used reside within Davis County. The county includes the cities of Bountiful, Centerville, Clinton, Farmington, Fruit Heights, Kaysville, North Salt Lake, South Weber, Sunset, Syracuse, West Bountiful, West Point, Woods Cross, and the balance of the unincorporated county. Davis Planning. Davis County Planning Department works with multiple jurisdictions regionally in order to coordinate planning efforts across the Wasatch Front. The Davis County General Plan consists of several documents that deal with different aspects of the physical and social fabric of the county. Davis County supports planning efforts that reach beyond our borders and integrate into surrounding jurisdictions. The following plans were not all created in the Davis County Planning Department, but all have special planning implications for Davis County. Why would Kaysville be a good place for a homeless shelter? That is a great question. Here are the reasons that it doesn't make sense to put a homeless shelter in Kaysville. Is there a hospital in Kaysville? What mental facilities are there in Kaysville? Is the admissions center a safe place to house people? Is it good for a homeless shelter to be right by the tracks? Is it good for the homeless shelter to be within walking distance of a park? Is it fair to the residential and business areas that are within walking distance? Is it a good enough reason because it is centrally located? Solution: where are the homeless people in Davis County located already? What is the percentage of Davis County homeless and the overflow that would come from Salt Lake City and other counties? We need these statistics to be able to best decide where a good place would be. Shouldn't the homeless center or shelter be where the homeless are already? We know Kaysville and Fruit Heights do not have a homeless situation. If the reason for a homeless shelter in Kaysville is that the property is owned by the county, there are more than likely other properties owned by the county that would be a better fit. It's my hope that the mayor and council feel the commitment and support of the people of Kaysville in supporting the city of Kaysville. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Val Starkey.
I want to add a few things about the shelter that's not been talked about much. So I've written a letter. It's short and sweet. A little technical. I'm technical. I address it and I'll read it. Dear Commissioner Carmelu, Mayor Tran, Kaysville City Council, Jason Christensen, Nick Mills, and Troy Rollins, the attorney for the county. It seems strange that Davis County and Kaysville City have been discussing a homeless shelter and have seriously considered the former Kaysville Emission Testing Center and have toured it, when the U.S. and the EPA and so many groups for seriously over 50 years to make the environment protect us, okay? This idea of using a former pollution monitoring environment and undoubtedly now polluted site now becomes acceptable to house our destitute friends. There seems to be an obvious overlooking of about 40 years of contamination, and it is considered to be a non-issue. What is the basis? Perhaps the assumption has been made that the building or site could off-gas or be cleaned up. The contamination would be small. Remediation is doable, but not cheap. Perhaps the legal risk is small. Attached are 3 documented sources that point to the fact that workers from this specialized industry have higher cancer risks by a factor of 10x, okay, and maybe more. In summary, let me quote Dr. Christopher Portier, chairman of the IARC working group, that stated the scientific evidence is compelling that the working group's conclusion was unanimous. Diesel engine exhaust causes lung cancer in humans. Dr. Portier continued, given the additional health impacts from diesel particulates, exposure to this mixture of chemicals should be reduced. It seems truly strange.
Thank you. Jason.
Thank you, Council. My name is Jason Largy. I live over just south of the overpass and near where the homeless shelter will be. I want to start off by saying that I firmly believe that the City Council and that the Mayor and that those involved are working to prevent any type of shelter, permanent or temporary, in Kaysville. I sincerely believe that, and I appreciate the efforts that have been done to rally the support of the citizens of Kaysville to help prevent what I know you said in your quick facts is perhaps out of our hands. If the county decides to do it, perhaps they can. We've reached out directly, my family and I, to Councilman Kamalu, or Councilperson Kamalu, and we specifically asked if that location, the emission center there, is being considered for either a permanent or temporary shelter location. Her response says, "We have not identified the current emissions site as a possible homeless shelter or a temporary Code Blue shelter. Health Department has operations inside through 2024 as programmed." So she said back, and I wanted to get that on the public record, that it is not being considered. The rest of her email, which was several pages long and had a bunch of information in it, did not preclude the possibility that it could be considered, nor did it say that it has not been considered. It said it is not considered. So I kind of take that as a win. I believe that it was being considered for sure. But I wanted to get that out there, that she has said it is not, and she copied, I think, most, if not all, of the City Council on that email. But I've been researching a little bit more. I'm a statistician and a mathematician by education. I'm a program manager, project manager by work that I do for the Air Force. And have been digging in. I've read House Bill 499. It's 499, right? I've read the bill. It looks to me like a template. I've seen the same bill in other areas. It looks like a national agenda being pushed all over. I know that we've talked previously about the City of Leagues and Towns, the Council of Leagues and Towns, the Council of Counties that are out there. I'm very leery of those things. I believe they could be great, but I believe they're national organized, much like the National Education Organization, that are meant to take away power from us locally. The assistance that they give us to help us understand things, I think, is good, but when they start telling us how to think about things, I get very concerned. It sounds a lot like the League of Nations that turned to the United Nations that I am not a fan of. But looking at data, I was looking at the Davis County Strategic Plan, or Davis County Local Homeless Council Strategic Plan for 2024 to 2028. And there's some facts that I don't know that have been validated saying that 1,200 children are classified as homeless in the Davis School District. That goes directly against, by an order of magnitude, the number of total homeless that should be in the county of 912 total. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate everyone signing up to speak. Thank you for being here. Council. Oh, sure. If you would like to email us research that you have, please do it. Please email it to us so that we have information as well. It's always great to have more information and more data. And the best decisions are based on data, so we appreciate that. Okay, all right. Let me find my agenda. Now we have an opportunity to hear the presentation of an award, Employee of the Quarter, which will be awarded to Mindy Edstrom. I'll turn the time over to her Department Director, Melinda Greenwood.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things as a director that we don't often have an opportunity to do is sing the praises of our employees, especially in a public meeting. So want to just go through a few things, the great points about Mindy, and it's just my pleasure as a director to be able to, tout the accomplishments and strengths of staff. So I'm going to start off by reading just a couple of different emails that have been sent to me from the mayor, because no one can write that better than her words. But they're about Mindy and the experience that the business community has had with her. So one's from March 16th of last year, and said that the mayor was pulled aside by somebody with the Davis Chamber to rave about Mindy and the Kaysville Business Group. He said he was so impressed with her organization, her engagement and involvement from the business community, and the fantastic presenters she had at her meetings. The Chamber wants to encourage all cities to form similar groups, and he said that Kaysville is one of the only cities in the county that do this and do it so well. Another one was from November of last year, and the mayor just said, I want to let you know a couple of great conversations she's recently had with new business owners. They both expressed appreciation for the professionalism and enthusiasm your employees have for their businesses. They attended the Kaysville business meeting and found it be a great way to network, and both specifically mentioned how much they enjoyed interactions with Mindy. One of them said, she makes me feel like she loves her job and actually likes being at work, compared to licensing experience I've had in other cities where people who were supposed to be helping us made us feel like we were intruding on their time. That is the epitome of Mindy. She is wonderful about immediately making people feel at home. In fact, when I interviewed for this position a couple of years ago, I made an intent of going and talking to each of the front counter staff, and everyone was lovely. I want to make that clear, but Mindy just was above and beyond, was just being so welcoming and kind and friendly, and she is that way with everyone, whether it's someone with a business license or somebody that comes in and has questions about community development projects. She just really is an asset to the city. And then the third thing I wanted to mention about Mindy is we can't talk about Mindy without talking about Kaysville Gives. This is a program that Mindy started several years ago when she was working part-time in the Parks and Recreation Department, and it's really flourished over the last 7 or 8 years and become a program where we are helping 150 families in this community who would not have a Christmas, or at least a meaningful Christmas, without the coordination of Kaysville Gives. And we have a lot of people involved with that, a lot of volunteers, but Mindy really is the heart of that program. also kudos to her husband, because Trevor has been involved as well with helping things with data processing on how we set that all up. But Mindy's a great employee. It is an honor to recognize her tonight, and I think she has a short speech prepared.
Come on
Okay.
down.
All right. So with that, I'll just invite Mindy to come up and just thank her for all her service to the community.
Thank you. Mindy, we can't wait to, I was gonna say,
just turn the 3-minute timer on. So I have my 3 minutes, right? Do I really need to make a speech? I love Kaysville. I love Kaysville City. I've worked here for almost 8 years. I live here, so you can't love Kaysville. You can't. I couldn't work here if I didn't love working here. So I'm really grateful for the people I get to work with. You guys are all fabulous. I've got some amazing coworkers. Everyone that I get to work with makes my job worth it. I just come for the emotional and mental health. The paycheck's great, right, Trevor? Because my shoe collection's getting big. But I love Kaysville. The residents are great. You guys are great. The businesses are great that I get to work with. I feel really lucky to have been able to work here. So,
thank you, Mindy. We are so grateful to have you. Yeah, let's go do a picture.
guys can all get your cameras out so you can have a picture of the reporters. We're going to post this on Twitter or whatever it's called. Yes. Thank you. Good job. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Mindy, feel free to leave and go get ice cream.
Yeah, you know,
And bring it back.
yeah, bring it back. I was going to say, Kaysville City has really fantastic employees. Hopefully you've all seen them working and you've interacted with them. Well, I think one thing that's just super special about Mindy is when she's not here, you notice. There's just a lack of energy and enthusiasm and happiness and joy, because I'm not kidding. She's so much fun. She lights up the room, and we just appreciate everything that you do. So thank you. All right. We'll move on to our agenda item, and which would be number 4. Does anyone have a conflict of interest regarding anything on the agenda tonight? No? Okay. All right. Then we'll move on to action item 6A. Consent item 5A and B. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve consent items A and B.
I'll second that.
Right. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Jackson, or who had to comment?
Actually, no, I'm good.
No? Okay. All right. All right. Councilmember Hunt.
Aye.
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 All right. Motion carries. Thank you. When things are on our consent agenda, it's because we've already discussed them, and that's why there's not a lot of discussion usually. Okay. All right.
Mayor?
Oh, John. Councilmember Adams, I forgot. He is on the phone with us. Want to make sure that you know he's here. Did you have... Yes. Councilmember Blackham.
No, I was just saying, I think I heard John in the background.
Oh, okay. Okay. All of a sudden, we heard this voice from outer space. Councilmember Adams, we're happy that you're online and joining us for the meeting. All right. We'll move on to action items 6A, request to rezone 7.74 acres of property at 367 South Angel Street from A5 heavy agriculture to R114 single-family residential for DW management. I'll turn the time over to Melinda Greenwood to present.
Okay, as the mayor said, this is a rezone application that the city received for the property at 367 South Angel. It's 7.74 acres, which is just over 337,000 square feet. It's currently zoned A5, which is a minimum of 5-acre lots, I believe. The density entitlement, when we talk about density, that's how many housing units per acre. But with the 5 acre minimum right now, the lot would only be eligible for one house. There is, I believe, a dwelling on the property right now. The zoning request is for single family, which would be R114, which has a minimum lot size requirements of 14,000 square feet. When we look at a rezone, we try and be as conservative as possible as we can with what that density entitlement is. So generally speaking, you can take about 20% of the overall acreage and then divide that by the lot size, because when you subdivide, you have to have roads and easements. So while this says that the entitlement would be 24 lots, I mean, I'll tell you, I've worked with developers enough to know if they could fit 24 lots with meeting our requirements, they sure will. But this really, in practical measures, would probably be closer to 18 or 19 lots. This is just an aerial view of the property that shows the location on Angel Street. There's residential property to the north, east and west, and then to the south there is another large portion of agricultural area that is undeveloped. When looking at a rezone, we always want to look around the existing neighborhood and ensure that there's no conflicts with what we would propose or what's being proposed. So this is a zoning map that shows the residential zoning around there. We have some R120, which is 20,000 square foot lots, which is about half an acre. We have some A5 and residential agricultural. And then to the south again is that property that's undeveloped. We also like to look to our general plan. It really is the guiding document that helps us determine if a rezone is something that would be supported. This general plan was approved in 2022. The 2 years before that, there was extensive public engagement. And so everything in the general plan really has been created with input from the community, the Planning Commission, and the City Council as well. So the future land use map is just kind of our ideal way of thinking, how would property develop in the future? This location is slated to be single-family residential, and that picture in the bottom left corner just shows the property. The yellow color shows that single-family residential is what we envisioned this property to be utilized for in the future. So the general plan contains a lot of different goals and objectives. One of those is to protect the small town atmosphere of Kaysville, and with keeping in mind that the surrounding area is residential, this is a residential rezone as well. We do feel like the R114 rezone fits well with that. This property actually was in front of the Planning Commission in November for a rezone to R120. And the night that it was supposed to go to City Council, the applicant pulled the application and then submitted for this R114. So just to give a little bit of context to that, the lot widths or the frontage requirements for R114 and R120 are the same. So as this is saying, the difference between those two zones, from the street frontage, you would never notice any difference because those lots would be the same width, whether they were R120 or R114. There were some other objectives in the plan that supported this rezone. So this is understandably kind of subjective, but a smaller lot, even though, a 3rd-acre lot is still going to be more expensive, but you have a 14,000 square foot lot that is going to be more affordable than an approximate half-acre lot. So adding the additional lots that would be allowed on this property by the smaller lot size, we would add more stock to our housing stock to our inventory. And then out on the west side of the city, there really is a lot of, larger lots, and so this would give a little bit of diversity to the area and provide some smaller lots with, again, not really changing the feel and character of the neighborhood because the frontage requirements would be the same. So this item was before the Planning Commission on January 25th. We did have 2 comments that were received. One was via email, and the resident was expressing the desire to have that property remain agricultural. And the other comment was from an individual who is representing the subdivision to the left, or to the east, or depending which direction you're standing, the left. But they were expressing opposition to the rezone. They stated they were supportive of the R120, but were not favorable for the R114. So the Planning Commission did vote 6-0 to send a recommendation of approval to the City Council. Based on that recommendation from the Planning Commission, staff is recommending that the council approve the zone change at 367 South Angel Street from A5 to R114. Dale Webster, the applicant, is here this evening, so I'll take any questions the council may have for me, and then he's present as well for questions you may have for him.
Thank you so much, Melinda. We have one person signed up to speak. Jason Largy, come on down to the mic. Please just state your name, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jason Largy. This wasn't something I was familiar with before I got here, but the topic is one I'm familiar with, as my previous research into the Davis County homeless plan discussed. One of the things in their plan is a discussion of housing. Part of that plan says that Davis County has both a supply issue and a price issue in terms of affordable housing. There isn't much that can be done to influence home prices, as those are largely driven by market dynamics. But there are things that can be done to subsidize home prices so that lower income families can afford to purchase a home. In terms of rental units, more needs to be done to incentivize construction of high density housing, such as zoning changes or grants, loans to developers to lower development costs. I disagree. I think that I can see why the neighborhood next to it wants R120 instead of R114. I live in an R120 area, and I know that R114 houses sell for just as much as mine does, that they build just as big a house on that smaller property. So it devalues the homes that are on larger lots. And if that's right next to it, I think that will drive home prices down for those. So I can see where they're coming from. But I'm also very concerned with how single-family housing has gone over the last several years. Years ago, I was involved with things with the Planning Commission where they wanted to redefine family to mean anyone who eats together as a family for single-family use. And I was shocked that Kaysville wanted to redefine the definition of family. I think that got killed, but that was to allow multiple people to live in houses. I believe that people are entitled to the pursuit of happiness, not happiness. It goes to, if we like how our town and our city is, that we should keep it that way. We should protect those who've chosen to live here for the look and feel. And I'm very concerned that with recommendations coming from the state and what I perceive as motivations at the state level driving requirements for single-family housing to then become a high density and no longer be allowed to say that we can't put multiple units if it sells, that anytime we're moving anything into residential and single-family, we're risking allowing more and more of that high-density housing that we can't stop if they push that back on us. And I believe we should be pushing back as much as possible and governing ourselves and asserting our right to be independent, even from the state, from the county, those type of things. So I'm opposed to converting agriculture to residential for the risks that I see that posing to us, and specifically R114 versus R120 for the neighbors with what's around it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, council, any questions, comments, discussions? Would you like to hear from the applicant? Councilmember Oaks?
No,
Would be helpful.
when the map was up there, there's the one road that's in, is it, I want to say Misty Fjord because I lived on Misty Fjord in Alaska. But there's the one road that is coming in, and okay, hold on. Willowbrook.
Willowbrook.
Is Willowbrook going to end up potentially running through this property. Did I see that?
So that's something we would determine at the next stage of development, which would be subdivision.
Okay.
But the city engineer has the ability to determine where those roads would be located and what connections they should have. In an ideal world, I think connectivity is very helpful. You can look at, right, it would be great if somebody who lives right here to just be able to go pop on Angel Street. Right now, they've got to go all the way around, down here, up and over. So connectivity really is something that's important, I think, for a sense of community and also just modes of travel. So I believe that we would require some type of road connection into Willowbrook and likely a stubbed road into the property to the south to prepare for future development in that location as well.
Oh, okay, thank you. That was the question. It comes in pros and cons because you have folks that are living back there that probably love the fact that they don't get traffic, that now they will. But at the same time, you will have a decrease of traffic throughout the rest of the subdivision, which is still beneficial. So that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt?
Sure. So Melinda, at what point, we've talked about stubbing a road out to that. It would go out to the undeveloped property, correct? The one to the
Yeah, to the property to the south, yeah.
At what point does that get put in? Like with this rezone, if we were to rezone it now, would we lose any opportunity to put that in as a stipulation?
No, no, because our subdivision code again gives the authority to the city engineer to determine where those road connection points would be, or where the roads would be. I did speak with our city engineer earlier today about this, and I just realized I had the cursor on my screen, not the screen everyone could see. But as far east as we could push a road connection would be ideal. And it looks to me like this lot here actually has a temporary turnaround on it. And so I believe the intent was always to have a road connection from there into the neighboring property when it developed.
Okay, and if I can keep going, that's one of the things that I've kind of brought up because in listening to some of the planning commission meetings, especially when they were speaking about the R120 rezone, that was definitely a concern that residents around there had. And for me would be like a deal breaker if the developer said they were not willing to do that, because I think absolutely we need to have connectivity. I was driving around that area today just to check everything out and look at traffic flows because it's another concern for residents. And I accidentally wandered onto Morning Mist and it took me 10 minutes to figure out how to get back out. I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit that out loud, but it took me 10 minutes to get back out of that neighborhood. Because there's so many circles, and I think we need connectivity, especially for safety with our first responders. And then if I can just, I don't know, I'll just keep going with kind of my thoughts on it. I think those were kind of my only questions. But I kind of distilled down with R120, and like Melinda said, R120, in a perfect world, maybe where there are no roads, would allow for 18, is that correct? And R114 would allow for 24. And I think if we require that stub to go to the lower property, that, if I'm correct in what I read, takes out 2 of the lots. So really we're increasing lots from 18, but probably less, to maybe 22 or 20. To me, it's not a huge change, especially like was brought up in the planning commission meeting. The lots are going to be visually almost indistinguishable from the ones around them. And then just because I know residents are concerned on a lot of things, people get concerned about, how many children is this going to bring? Is this going to overload the schools? So I looked it up and this area, sorry to lecture everyone, this area would actually go to Kays Creek Elementary. And according to the district's projections, where they say that each single family home would bring about 0.89 children per home, we'd only be getting about 22 200-ish children, so I don't think it's going to break the bank on that school. And those are kind of the things. I know a lot of people reach out and are concerned about traffic, but with only the potential of maybe 22, 24 houses going in. I know it seems like a lot, but for a street like that, I think the addition of having it developed and getting the curb and gutter there brings an element of safety that kind of counteracts the additional cars. So just kind of my thought process as we go through all this.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that and appreciate your thoughtful responses there and questions. Councilmember Jackson?
Oh, yes, and Councilmember Hunt, I completely agree with you. I want to see a road connection there. I don't like the thought of the thought of not connecting and just kind of having more of a hodgepodge developments in our community. I've been in the same situation as you, where I've gotten lost in that neighborhood that you mentioned. Yeah, just a few points here. One of the biggest reasons why I ran for public office is to protect the character of Kaysville. We all love Kaysville in our community. And so when I look at these sort of things, I look at what would fit in the community, what would fit in the neighborhood, to preserve the culture and whatnot. And, you know, after looking at everything here, I kind of did a little bit of research as well. And 14,000 foot lots, it comes to a 0.32 acre. You could build potentially a 3,000 square foot home on that. With the, what's that? 5,000 square foot home if you don't want property. Well, with the current plan in place, the fact that the setbacks are going to be the same as the surrounding homes, I think this type of a project could blend extremely well with the surrounding homes. And also a concern of mine is, you know, we have a lot of folks that live in Kaysville, and eventually, like my own parents, my father, he's probably going to have to move out of his home one day to move into a patio home. And I think diversity is good in the community when it comes to these type of homes, but it's also good to have it blend with the surrounding neighborhood. And after reviewing this, it seems like this plan would complement the neighborhood and would bring a slightly alternative to the types of homes that people can move into and that we would want. And I think that's pretty much it. I would like to hear from the applicant if they're here.
Sure. Would you like to come in? Sure. That would be great. Kind of share your vision with us.
I'm not sure that I have a vision. This was my grandfather's farm, and my dad just asked me to make it blend in, like you guys have said, with the surrounding area. We have looked north into some land that some other family members of mine are developing, and there are some 114s just to the north, a little north of the churches there. So we just thought we were, doing the same thing and again, blending in with the surrounding areas. Yes, the backyards will be different, slightly smaller, but I mean, I've seen homes on an R114 put swimming pools and pickleball courts and enjoy that land with their family. It was interesting, the last council meeting that I attended, I was encouraged to build even smaller, and that's not really our vision. We want it to blend in with surrounding areas and maybe bring in a more affordable home to Kaysville or this area. So,
thank you very much. Any questions, Council? No? No? Okay, right. Thank you very much. All right. Seeing no questions, no additional comments? Councilmember Blackham.
The only comment I would make is it's a little deceptive when you think it's going from an R120 to an R114, because if you look across the street, that's an RA zone, which in an RA zone you have to have a minimum of 21,000. Well, it's 21,000 and something, which is an actual half acre. But if you look, when the developer did that, they took so much property out of each one of those lots, and then they created the Kaysville Soccer Park there. So, and the same thing happened, I believe, in part of this subdivision early on, is they have a park up there. It's a common area park, and that property was taken and combined, and the lots were actually made smaller. So I think if you tried to compare actual R114 lots with the lots that are in the area, they're going to be about the same size, especially when the frontage is the same, side yard's the same, the rear yard requirements are the same. The only difference you usually see is they may have a little bit more depth in their backyard or something like that. But if you see the surrounding zones, they were given credits to put the parking because that was part of the development, which reduced the size of the lots. Same thing with Symphony when they did that on the east side of this. And so the R114s are going to blend in, and they're probably going to be about the exact same size as all the lots surrounding them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I'll make the motion that we approve the request to rezone 7.74 acres of property at 367 South Angel Street from A5 to R114 for DW management.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Comments, council? Okay, I'll call for a vote. Oh, and Councilmember Adams, I forget you're up there, out there. Would you like to, we'll start with you.
Aye.
Councilmember Jackson.
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. That passes unanimously. Good luck with your subdivision and your development. And we'll come back when we see the subdivision. Okay. Action item 6B, a resolution amending section 5.03 of the Personnel Rules and Regulations Disciplinary Procedures. Turn the time over to our staff attorney, Nick, for this. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. This is a change that we discussed at our last meeting, and this is a fairly simple change. It broadens the ability of who can give a written reprimand to an employee. So this would broaden it from just department heads to department heads or an authorized supervisor with the department head's concurrence. We discussed this last meeting, and I think we're ready at this point to answer any questions and then take whatever action the council would like.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments, questions, council? Councilmember Hunt.
I just want to say thanks for your work on this. I appreciate that it kind of makes the ability for discipline to be more robust, which I think is beneficial to the city, but also to the employees, so they have more notice if they made a mistake. And so I think it's a good move.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right.
No, I would just say the same. I think this is probably overdue, and I thought it read well.
All right, thank you very much. Ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve a resolution amending section 5.01 of the Personnel Rules and Regulations Disciplinary Procedures.
And I'll second.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. Comments? Nope, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. Councilmember Oaks.
Aye.
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 Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion carries. All right. Let's move to agenda number 7, work items. 7A, discussion on proposed consolidated fee schedule amendment related to development review fees. Turn the time over to Josh Belknap. Hi.
I'm back. Mayor and council, thanks for allowing me to come visit with you tonight. We just wanted to kind of get some input from council, have a discussion on an item that we've been looking at and talking about quite a bit recently. As you're aware, the current city engineer, Dexter, will be leaving next Thursday, will be his last day with us. And if I can, it's like wedding singer, I have the microphone, so I'm going to take the opportunity. Phenomenal. Sorry, I'm sure a lot of the people here aren't used to seeing a large individual like myself get emotional, but what a tremendous sorry privilege it is to work with all of the people that we work with here. And we have amazing staff, as Melinda mentioned, Dexter is a prime example of that. Sorry. Whew. Anyway, now I can move on. Sorry. As we've just been discussing his departure, one of the items that we've identified is Dexter was heavily involved with developments between plan review and a lot of coordination. And the obvious question is, what will we do in his absence? Specifically, short term, we've been talking quite a bit about bridging the gap by utilizing some consulting services. We recently found out that the options for consulting services probably aren't as available as we would hope. But regardless, one of the things that we've identified in speaking with other cities and speaking with consultants about this is that particularly in light of the changes with the legislature about development review and what people are frequently referring to as the shot clock, is the trend of trying to absorb that financial impact. And when I say absorb, specifically assigning that financial impact to the developer. There's some options. Generically, it's kind of two groups. There are some cities where they are, if they're utilizing a consultant, they'll take that invoice and they'll pass, the city will pay that invoice for the consultant to review, and then they will pass that straight through to the developer for reimbursement. The other option is kind of establishing something in the fee schedule that says, in a residential situation or whatever situation, we're going to say there's so much cost per lot associated with that development review and the coordination process, et cetera. And it's certainly not try to generate revenue. I think it's just trying to acknowledge the fact that that's a significant drain on city resources and trying to account for that impact. So there's some pros and cons that we've seen in talking and in looking at this. Passing through the invoice for reimbursement is more of a true cost accounting type approach. There is the potential for developers to feel like, I disagree with me having to pay this specific invoice. That's tied to a question that was raised by the city. I don't feel like that's my problem. Or cities feeling like they're kind of turning into debt collectors, like, hey, we still don't have reimbursement on the invoice. The other option is, as we have looked at, establishing just kind of a flat fee. There is that drawback where that could underrun somewhat. We certainly don't want to get into the situation where we're always overrunning and we're making it seem like we're trying to generate revenue, as I said. But it gives a developer kind of a better idea upfront. Hey, I'm planning my development. I know that this is roughly what I'm looking at for number of lots. I can factor that into my cost, as well as the city has the ability to, all right, we can focus on the review and the coordination and not be chasing you around. The other benefit to that approach, as I see it, is those fees would be included in the upfront costs. If you want your preliminary plat to be considered, legitimate, you have all of your items, one of those would be, are your fees paid? But this is a good question, whether or not we go with a consulting service, whether or not we do it internally. I think there's that ability, regardless, as we go forward with developments in the city, to take an approach like this. So wanted to come and discuss with council and get some input and direction there.
We appreciate you getting in front of this. For those that are listening or those in the audience, the shock clock that he speaks of are mandates or laws that are coming from the state saying that cities need to be be more responsive to developers. And it's kind of a difficult conversation. We want development in our communities. We want houses for our kids to live in. At the same time, we still have fees that we're being required to pay to be quicker and to be more responsive and to make sure that we can get plans reviewed quickly. So appreciate so much that you're bringing this before us. Just a random question for me. So it kind of sounds like from the city accounting perspective, it would be much simpler so that we don't additionally have labor costs in terms of chasing developers down, being bill collectors, to just update the fee schedule. Is that what you're kind of seeing?
I think generally, and as we spoke with one consultant in particular, that was his recommendation with some of the cities he's working with, kind of simplifying the process, but trying to make the process robust as you determine what that number is, so that we're not over or under. We're pretty close to what actual is. So.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Blackham.
The questions I have now, obviously, because it's a consolidated fee schedule, and everybody has access to that. Now, I know as a developer, and I know you don't want to get into this. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. I guess I can't speak for you. But if I'm a developer and I'm going to do a 20-lot subdivision, I would want to know what my flat fee would be, because I don't want to get in the argument with you that, well, we use this person as a consulting engineer, and they say, well, my engineer doesn't charge nearly that much money. He charges way more money an hour, and so we're paying a higher fee because you're using them. I would rather see it be some sort of a set. I mean, you're going to have to get the average, and some you'll win, some you'll lose, Correct. But I think from my aspect looking at it, it's always better if I think we've got something that can be specifically looked at. And then there's always that clause that says, if we have additional reviews, then you should add this much, and you should actually have that. You should say, if this requires us to do a second review, you will be charged this amount per lot. But I think it needs to be very clear so that it's not us arbitrarily picking numbers and an engineering firm saying, well, this is a 20-lot subdivision. We took 10 hours to review this one, and we took 15 hours to do this one. It might be possibly that it takes them that long based on the ability of the engineer that submitted that original. But it's still better for us as a city, I believe, to have that number very specific, somewhat in black and white.
Absolutely agree. Since this is a work item, just speak at will and be free.
Well, if I speak at will, someone's going to speak over me, so, or I'll speak over someone.
Okay, then turn on your lights, guys.
No, I totally agree with Councilmember Blackham, and I have my own personal opinion about what the state legislature says about developers, because 3/4 of them are in the real estate, business, and so there's a little conflict of interest there. I guess I did say that out loud, didn't I? Anyways, but I don't want the city to be responsible for chasing down in bill collectors, and if they know up front. And, and you're going to work with other cities and see what their schedules are, see what the averages and what they're doing. And because Kaysville is Kaysville, we'll just add 5 or 10% on that. And because we need to hire a new city engineer.
Right, we do.
So maybe 30%.
30%.
No, so I'm all in favor of what you're doing there, Josh. And thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
And I just want to echo what my colleagues have said. I absolutely agree. I think this will streamline the process, make it more efficient, and efficiency oftentimes saves money and resources. And thank you for all the work you've done on this.
And can I say, I want that efficiency to happen, not because we're being told by the developers to help, the legislature to help developers. Well, I guess I did say it right the first time, didn't I? But because it's more efficient for the city. And
absolutely,
sorry,
thank you.
Abby, see how we talked over
you. Go ahead, Councilmember Hunt.
I just want to say I love chatting with you about about this week. It was very informative. And honestly, when you first brought it up, I was surprised that it's even allowed. So if the state hasn't caught wind of it, I say we go full steam ahead until they make us stop. But I do also like the idea of having specific fees like you brought up, just to simplify everything.
Right. I'm glad that it's something that seems to already be happening, but also I think there's further precedence, so that it doesn't seem like we're trying to sneak around and be underhanded in this approach. You know, in building plan review, I think it's kind of a similar process where there's technical professionals that are going to be required to come in, and you know, is that the city's responsibility to absorb that cost, or do we, you know, assist with the development occurring and the building occurring, while making sure that those creating the impact are responsible for the associated costs. So
Well said. That was perfectly phrased, because that's the responsibility of a city, to make sure that the impacts are felt and someone pays for them. So
correct.
Appreciate that. And it's not borne by our residents. Councilmember Adams, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Oh, sorry. I was just so soothed by Josh's voice that I agree with everything he's suggested.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. So do you have enough direction to move forward?
yeah,
Okay.
I think what we'll do is we'll continue looking at other cities and also continue looking at what we're doing internally and what external options there are to try and come up with what a accurate representation of what that cost will be, and come back to the council with an action item. So
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sure.
You talk about consultants. Why do we need consultants in any of these discussions?
Just from a sheer volume of time standpoint, the development process, you know, coordinating with the developers as they come in, letting them know, you know, this is exactly what you've got to do here in Kaysville, going through the preliminary and final plat phases, coordinating on all of the phases of the review process, reviewing the plans, getting those plans and plats recorded with the county, managing the bonds as they're coming in, managing the release of the bonds, managing the coordination with the inspectors in public works in regards to, you know, are we at building permit application stage, and what, if not, what items have to be completed before we can do that. As we move to the warranty stage, what items are outstanding on the punch list? Are we able to accept the improvements? If not, what needs to be done before accepting the improvements and releasing those bonds? So there's a decent amount of work regularly, and that's now condensed into a shorter period of time. So the hope is we move forward and get ourselves reestablished to where we wouldn't need to look at relying on an outside consultant, but just with Dexter leaving, kind of creating that vacuum.
Yeah, I can understand with the Dexter. Because my only question for you, especially as we're going to the budgetary discussions that we're talking, with what you might potentially spend on, you know, year in and year out on consultants, is it more, would it be better just to hire an additional full-time? Yeah. Or even two? I don't know the costs, and so I'm just, as we go into our discussions over the next little while, right? Just, you just take that for homework.
I think our preference would be, you know, if consultants are utilized, it would be short-term, and then look at returning to an internal operation. But
Just a comment. I mean, I'll use the analogy of a building inspector. A building inspector knows a little about a lot, but he doesn't know a lot about anything. And when you need consultants, it's because you need somebody who knows a lot about little things, but, you know, and so you need the help with certain things. And I think a lot of times cities, plus he may get 3 of these applications in one day. That doesn't mean you get to start it 15 days after the next one, 15 days after the next one. If 3 show up in one day, you got to, it starts 15 days on all 3 of them. But the point is a lot of times there are technical things in there that we really do need consultants for, with somebody who's expertise is in that, and I think this gives us the ability. That's why, hopefully when you look at these numbers with your experience in the past, we'll have that kind of figured in there. And
Correct.
so,
yeah. Okay. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. So you have enough direction? Okay.
I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so,
Do we need to make a motion?
oh, yes, we do. We need to make a motion.
All right, so I'll make a motion that we move the discussion on proposed consolidated fee schedule amendment related development review fees to an action item. Is that the right motion?
It is.
Okay.
And I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Comments, discussion? No? All right, Councilmember Adams.
Aye.
Councilmember,
aye.
yeah.
Aye.
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 Thanks for keeping track of who was next. I lost count. Okay. All right, work item 7B, discussion on Kaysville City Center Community Reinvestment Area and the Redevelopment Agency roles. Turn the time over to Melinda.
Thanks again, Mayor. So before we get into some of the specifics of what we are hoping to do with the community reinvestment area that we've been working on for the last couple of years, I wanted to just give a very brief overview of the Community Reinvestment Act and how that works in cities. So interesting fact, but this act is found in Title 17 of the state code. 17 is all germane to counties. With cities, municipal government, everything's in Title 10. So this is under Title 17 because it's the county that has the authority to approve a project area. But state code spells out that the governing body of an agency or community redevelopment agency is the current community legislative body, which is the city council. The mayor or their designee serves as the executive director. Again, it is the county that has the authority to create these project areas. When they are created, you have to have interlocal agreements with each of the individual taxing entities, and then the whole reason for creating a project area would be to use tax increment financing, or TIF, to help areas overcome development impediments. So I want to give a shout out to Bloomington, Illinois, because I stole this graphic from them. But this is just a really great way to depict how tax increment financing works. So when you create a project area, you have a base valuation of all the properties within that area. And at that kind of snapshot in time, you know the amount of property tax revenues that are coming into all the taxing entities at that point in time. You need to kind of freeze that. And then these interlocal agreements with the taxing entities, let me move my mouse over to here, but they agree for a period of time, which is included in those interlocal agreements, to give a certain portion of those increases in tax revenues to the agency, and then those revenues are to be used to make improvements within that project area. And the benefit of that is that after term, most often, the project value or the property values within that project area grow at a higher rate because we're pouring funding back in to redevelop the area or develop the area if it's a greenfield. And so after that point in time, then the benefit to those taxing entities is that maybe over those 15 years without the project area, the property tax valuation would have increased by 30%, but with the additional development and pouring those fundings back into the area, it may be 60%. So in Murray, when I worked there, I was in charge of all the redevelopment agencies, and you're required also to submit annual reports to the state, but for one of those project areas, you would see that citywide, the valuation was increasing by about 3%, but in that property or that project area, it was about 12% per year. So that's how you know that those TIF funds are going back in and really accomplishing that end goal of having more property tax revenues in the end. So with that, I'll just go into kind of what we are hoping to accomplish over the course of the next couple weeks. You've seen this graphic before. This is from our general plan. This is the city center concept that was identified in that general plan. And so we have created a project area that kind of mirrors that city center area. And the overall statistics with this area is just over 260 acres. Most of that, 66%, is zoned commercial. There's 18% that's residential, and then about 15% that's vacant. The RDA process requires that we call out the main streets that are included within a project area. So in this instance, we have 200 North, we have Main Street, and then Flint Street. So we have been meeting with the county and the school district over the course of the last couple of years, discussing this, getting their feedback, refining the proposal that we will take to them and hope get approved. But what we are requesting is that the taxing entities, so that would be the mosquito abatement district, the school district, the county, participate at a rate of 60%, which means anything above that base valuation, those tax revenues, 60% of that would come to the agency and 40% would still go to those taxing entities. We are proposing the city, because we're also a taxing entity, participate at a rate of 80%. One of the things the county likes to see is that we are all in with these because we're asking them to give up revenues as well. So we're proposing this Kaysville City Center project area be for 15 years. We would trigger the area, which means that's when we would start collecting the tax increment in 2025. This is all projections, but we are projecting at this time that the project area could bring as many as $5.1 million to the agency. And then $10 million cap. So if everything happened way better than we thought it would, and we start getting additional revenues in, those the TIF that would come back to the agency would be capped at $10 million. Now, when we talked with the county about this a couple weeks ago, they had some discussion on that cap and maybe lowering it, but I said in my staff report that we have met with the two main taxing entities, and the next steps then would be to take this project to them with the interlocal agreements. But one of the things, or several things that we would hope to do with this project area is improve some of the streetscapes and the street improvement. We've been working with UDOT the last few years to come up with a streetscape that would fit this downtown historic area right here. There's beautification and landscaping projects that we feel like could really enhance the area and the aesthetics. There's sidewalk and infrastructure. We've been, the majority of the areas along 200 North and Main Street actually are slated for mixed use, which we try and encourage the pedestrian-oriented development. Open spaces, parking enhancements, that's specifically important in our downtown area. We don't have a lot of public parking for the theater, for some of the businesses on Main Street. We have some beautiful buildings on Main Street. We'd like to continue to preserve those. And so all of these tax revenues, the TIF that would come in, these are the type of projects we would anticipate spending those revenues on. The next three slides is just going to be kind of, so this slide shows over the course of the 15 years at 60%, actually I think that should just say over 15 years, but this is how much tax generation we believe would happen in the whole area. So it would be 8.3 million. You see how much is coming to Davis County, to the school district, Kaysville. And then it would be that portion, the 60% that we're asking of the agencies and the 80% to the city that we would ask for them to, yield over to the agency. So this slide just shows the delta between those two. And this is what would go back to the taxing entities. And so that 40% that Davis County would keep would be that $392,000. The school district would get $2.1 million. The city would, be receiving $266 million. And then this is the amount of incremental agency or revenues that would come to the agency. So I mentioned at the beginning, we would anticipate that to be about $5.1 million. We would have some administrative costs deducted for the administration of the project area, and the county would require a reciprocal amount of administrative costs be deducted as well. And another thing that state code requires is that a 10% set aside for affordable housing be taken out of every single project area. So with the project areas, when you establish those, the TIF that comes in has to be used within those project area boundaries or have some type of very direct connection and benefit to that project area. So with the housing funds, we have the flexibility of using that anywhere within the county or the city boundaries. When we adopted our 2022 general plan, one of the things we committed to with our moderate income housing plan was to create a down payment assistance program for our employees. And so we would utilize this 10% set aside to create that program and help fund hopefully getting some of our employees to be able to live within Kaysville City. So the benefits long run of that community reinvestment area is those property values increase at a more dramatic rate. We would be able to have infrastructure improvements we wouldn't be able to fund otherwise. That's really going to generate a lot more private investment without some of those reinvestments in the area. And then of course we would hope to improve the overall appearance of our city center. That would also help our ability to recruit businesses. Some of the locations along Main Street and 200 North are looking dated, and that does matter to businesses. And so we could assist with facade improvements. Again, we can preserve and protect some of our historic buildings and heritage. And then those taxing revenues still would be $8.3 million to all the taxing entities over the years, the 15 years. And then lastly, we would anticipate that the valuation of the entire project area over their 15 years would increase by $76 million. And of course, this is all estimates, but we just wanted to review this with the council slash agency to inform you what we have been doing. Again, we've met with the county commission. We are getting ready to get an interlocal agreement back to them to hopefully have that approved. We met with the school district earlier this week and internally with their staff, and the next step would be to take this to a work session with the school district and hopefully get a positive response from them. One of the things that is key to understand is if for some reason the school district didn't want to participate, really the forward motion of this proposal is kind of dead in the water because they are the largest taxing entity, and without their assistance and their participation, it just wouldn't make much sense to go forward with this. Consequently, actually, that's one of the things that this is a bigger project area than you normally see, but we had to include a lot of acreage really to be able to generate a meaningful amount of increment to do much with. And so again, as we've worked through this process over the last couple of years with the county, we've refined this. We feel like we're in a pretty good spot and just wanted to bring this back to the council to refresh. Happy to answer any questions if there are.
Thank you. Appreciate your presentation there. So just to kind of clarify, Kaysville City Council also is the community reinvestment agency for the city. And so we're the same group of people, and we just put on a different hat, and now we're the redevelopment agency / community reinvestment agency. So Jason and I and Melinda had an opportunity to meet with Davis County a couple weeks ago, and then the school district, just some leadership in the school district, just to kind of run the idea by them again, to kind of remind them that we're doing this. I want to make it clear for anyone listening, this is not an increase in anyone's taxes. What this does is we're asking Davis County to say, hey, instead of taking this percentage of taxes, will you just reduce it for 15 years? Because then we're going to take that money, as well as the school district, we're going to reinvest it in Kaysville City, in this area that's been highlighted, so that we can improve values and opportunities moving forward. And the anticipation is that after 15 years, the values will have increased substantially because we've been able to provide some improvements within the community to redevelop those areas, and then they're going to end up getting more tax long term. So I just want to clarify that. We're not increasing a tax, we're not charging a tax, we're actually asking the county and the school district to take less tax, as well as the city, momentarily, so that we can redevelop our city and reinvest in it. That's Councilmember Blackham.
I just have a question. Okay, since this is considered a community redevelopment area, so if I have $1 million property right now, my taxes won't change and the increment won't change where it goes. It's only if I reinvest in that property and now that property becomes worth $1.5 million, the increment is only going to be on the additional $500,000. Is that correct? I believe that's how reinvestment, isn't it?
So yes and no. The difference is you would pay the same amount of taxes.
Yes.
Right? But that difference of the $500,000 from the 1 million to the 1.5,
that $500,000 would be subject to the redevelopment increments, right? The additional $1 million in the initial tax would still stay the same. Is that not correct?
Well,
like I'm saying, the school district's not also going to give up 40% of the existing tax. What they're saying is if you're going to redevelop your property and make it worth more money, we're not going to lose money. We're just going to lose money on the increased value.
Yeah, so essentially what happens is what all of the agencies are receiving now kind of freezes. So
yes,
it's only the growth, that they would cross over to the agency. Yeah, so they would not receive any less tax revenues than they do currently, but any of that growth is the 60% to the agency, the 40% to us. Yes, council member, that's correct.
And that's just saying, I mean, if they do redevelop it, the school district's not technically losing money. They're just not getting as much as they would have gotten had they not participated in redeveloping your city for a betterment in the long run.
Yeah, and then again, their incentive to participate is that at the end of those 15 years, the valuation of the entire project area has grown so much more than it would have without, that it is worth them, that then they might only get $1 million of extra revenues, but because we created this area, at the end of that time, they get 15 million. I should also add that we would not anticipate this project area create a lot of school-aged children. If there is to be residential development, it would probably be higher density, not single family, and the single family really is, as Councilmember Hunt spoke on the rezone earlier, that's where a lot of those school-aged children come from. So if this was going to be a project area that would create a lot of school-aged children, the school board would be much more hesitant, if not even resistant, to participating at all. But with the amount of, this really would be more commercial. Those school-aged children coming out of this would be, I think, very minimal. And it's hard to determine what the density or how many residential units would be created, but we would not anticipate that that would be a huge impact to the schools.
Thank you for both of you for clarifying that. Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, a quick question in regards to your proposal to the school district. Is there any aspects to this proposal that would make the school district more likely to move forward and approve it? And then I'm curious about what you just said, because in my mind, I would think that they would be more likely to if there were more children, more housing involved. And so I'm curious about that, if you could expound.
We really would anticipate that the redevelopment of this area would be commercial. There may be, well, we would also hope for mixed use as well, But the amount of school-aged children that come out of apartments or townhomes, that higher density, is just much less than what comes out of a single-family home. So to answer your other question, Councilmember Jackson, when we met with the school district on Monday, they gave us some great pointers of things to talk to the board about. One of those was job creation. That's something that the county looks at as well when they're determining whether or not they want to create a project area. So again, estimates, but we would think that this project area could create as many as 600 office jobs, which, could be on average a $65,000, $75,000 salary, which is pretty good. We were, I believe, estimating about 300 retail commercial jobs. And then, of course, as redevelopment happens, you would have temporary jobs with construction and that type of a thing. So we feel like there would be, and those are very conservative estimates, but we feel like there would be some really great opportunities for employment to come with this redevelopment.
I have a follow-up to that. And so in the potential of having 600 jobs, does it take into account the projects or the developments that we've already discussed as a council and approved?
I did include that. So this does include the office space that we have approved with the Holland mixed-use development over off of 400 West and the recent one we did with the Oak Lane development on 200 North and 200 West. And in fact, I actually used the figures that was submitted in the economic study for the Holland development to kind of calculate some of this. But I averaged out what we have seen come through with some of the recent office projects. I averaged that out. There's a kind of a standard formulation you use to estimate jobs based on square footage. And so that's where those calculations came from. And we were very conservative with that just because this is definitely something that we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver on. And especially, we don't have a lot of control over what happens with redevelopment because we don't own the property. But we would anticipate, that we would have several hundred well-paying jobs that would come into the community.
Would it be fair to say that that some of the decisions we've made over the last year or 2 years in some of this development has put us in a better position now to qualify for this?
Yes, that's a great point. And actually, I had a slide in that we presented to both the commission and the school district staff that kind of showed some of those steps that we've recently taken. One of the guidance, or some of the guidance from the county, was show us how you're going to leverage this money, show us that you're going to apply for grants, show us that you're going to be wise with spending this money. And so we've received some grants from DEQ to do phase 1, phase 2 on the library building. We had a grant to do the structural assessment on the old library. We've worked with UDOT on the Main Street visioning project, and we would anticipate that we would apply for a grant with that as well. So we have made some strides. I applied for a small area plan for the city center area, a grant with Wasatch Front Regional Council. Coincidentally, I received an email earlier this week. I had estimated the value of, or the cost of that project to be $80,000. They came back and said it'd probably be more around $140,000. But and then our participation match on that would be about $10,000. But those are the types of things that we want to do as a city to make sure that we utilize and leverage any outside funding so that we can maximize the investment that those taxing entities are granting to us. We've also made some recent code changes to start the process to get the type of development the community really envisioned in that 2022 plan. And then, of course, one of the greatest things we've been working on is the old library and reutilizing that, repurposing that for the food hall with Alchemy, which we hope that'll be coming back to the council in the next couple of months. So we have done a lot recently to really kind of queue this up and get it prepared to also show those taxing entities, look, we're all in. We're trying, we're committed to this. And so showing that they are more likely to, subrogate those funds to us.
And to your point, Councilmember Jackson, we appreciate the council, the work that the council's done over the last couple of years to really focus on redevelopment and new opportunities within Kaysville, to be more open to great commercial businesses, to allow for some mixed-use type housing projects so that we have younger families, younger working professionals. We want to encourage more people to be in our community, and now we want to give them even more opportunities to stay and to eat and to play here. So we want to make sure that the money that is made in Kaysville is spent in Kaysville. And so all of these things have really helped towards making our case that, hey, we're not just asking for a handout, we're also doing our part as a city. So appreciate that. Thank you, Melinda. Do we need...
Mayor?
Yes, Councilmember Hunt.
I think I just wanted to bring up, we show kind of some of the concept ideas that we've had for the Main Street redevelopment. And we've had meetings. We're not just like, oh, we're going to take this money and we're going to do whatever we want with it. We've had meetings with the business owners over there, and where people were invited. And I guess I just want people to know that we're going to continue to have meetings like that until we figure out exactly the very best. It's not like we're applying for this money and then as a council we're just going to spend it anyway. We're going to get input, and we're going to continue to involve the community to make sure that this is something that'll make sense, to make sure, involve all the stakeholders and people who know and understand. Like when we had this meeting, businesses were like, well, you can't take away the parking on the street right now. There's no way anyone can come to my business if you don't. And so, or if you do. And so, those are the kinds of things that we continue to try to get from the residents. And just moving forward, I guess kind of assure everyone that we'll continue to do that and we'll continue to take feedback, because I think we all have a real love for our main street. I think probably that's half the reason half of us are living here is because we drove down that main street and said, this is absolutely where I want to have my family. I know it was for us. Definitely one of the reasons. So just know that we're not willy-nilly, like, oh, we have this cool shiny idea, we're going to make a change, we're going to keep taking advice. And then just one quick question for Melinda. Who does make the final decision with the school system? Is it the school board or? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
And to your point, yes, we'll have to go and present this to the school board, and they'll have a meeting where people can come in and comment as well, just like we have ours, and then they'll make a decision at that point.
Yeah, so if we get enough kind of head nods from them at that workshop session, then what we would do is we would take that interlocal back to the county. They would grant the approval of the project area. We will need to hold a public hearing, and there's a specific notification process for that. So the city council would also need to enter into an interlocal agreement with the Community Reinvestment Agency, because we would also be contributing to the TIF to go to the agency. So there are several more steps to get to where we hope to be, but I think things are looking good. And from the standpoint of this is really exciting stuff. Like, this is the stuff that I'm passionate about. This is the stuff that's so fun to work on, to really help a community become what it wants to be. As Councilmember Hunt said, we would definitely utilize the information from surveys that we did with the general plan and information in the general plan to accomplish the goals and visions of the community. It's not Melinda's goal. It's not the council's goals. It really is the goal of what all of our residents collectively said they would like to see in that general plan. So this is super exciting stuff. This is what makes me really love to come to work and work on things like this. So I'm so happy I'm here and able to work on a project like this.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. What kind of action do we need, Jason, Nick? Do we need to? I mean, we need to wait for an interlocal.
Keep on going. Good work.
Right. So we'll just continue having conversations. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Thank you. Councilmember reports. Anyone? Councilmember Hunt.
Sorry to keep everyone longer. I'm trying to just every time give at least a little bit of an update, but all of the liaison positions that I am working on are still going smoothly. The Communities That Care is still moving forward and making exciting progress. Youth Court's doing well, as Councilmember Jackson would also be able to tell you. Things are looking good.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councilmember Jackson.
Councilmember Blackett mentioned this last time, but just to reiterate, we're down at the Capitol every week fighting for our city and watching all the state potential legislation coming down the pipeline and trying to influence that as much as possible. So it's good policy, good legislation that allows us to be your voice with more strength versus having to be forced to comply with state legislation that may or may not be in our best interest. And so we're down there weekly, and it's a pleasure to try to lobby our state to do the right things. So,
Thank you so much, and you're down there every day, so appreciate you. All right, anyone else? No? Okay, my report again is just that we appreciate your involvement as a community. We appreciate hearing from our residents. Thank you for your feedback. We do listen to it. We pay attention to what you're saying because we represent you, and so we appreciate the engagement. As far as some of the bills that we're watching, we are definitely watching housing bills. We're watching bills that have to do with shelters and unsheltered people. We're watching bills that have to do with unfunded mandates from the state, and that's when the state passes a law that affects cities, and we don't have the money to really implement the law. And so then we scramble and we try to figure out how to get in front of that. And so we're watching those types of legislation as it works through, and we're making sure that our voices count and we represent you. So appreciate that. Jason, City Manager report.
I'll just echo that. Sometimes I get up in the morning and I'm just starting to check emails, and the mayor's already been at the Capitol for an hour meeting with legislators. So it's just a ton of work going on behind the scenes, and thank you for everything all of you guys are doing. And yeah, boy, 16 days left of the 45-day session, so there's still a lot to go. I just wanted to remind everybody, I think the next time we meet will be on Friday, March 1st. That's 2 weeks from tomorrow, to do another session of capital planning. So the next session will be focused on buildings, facilities. We'll look at the Ops Center, fire station, parks, things like that. And that'll follow the same format. So we'll start at 8 a.m. over in the conference room there 2 weeks from tomorrow. And thank you for all your input. The last session was very valuable. And I think that's really it. So,
thank you so much. All right. Would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I will so move.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. No, Abby, so well spoken. You did fantastic.